can't argue with that, but—" She tucked her long blonde hair behind her ears in a nervous gesture and glanced over her shoulder. "I'm sorry, I've already made up my mind." The expression in her large blue eyes was tortured. He could tell that she was torn between what she thought and felt and what others were telling her. He knew she was afraid of what he'd once been. He wouldn't want a daughter of his to marry an ex-con either, but he couldn't change his past. He could only change his future. "Katie." Reaching out, he ran a finger along her jaw. The contact made him yearn to hold her, and she seemed to feel something similar. She closed her eyes and pressed her cheek into the palm of his hand as though she was dying for his touch. "You still care about me," he murmured. "I can tell. Come back to me." Tears glittered in her eyelashes, reflecting the porch light. "No," she said, suddenly pushing his hand away. "Don't confuse me. Andi tells me I'll feel differently after a few months away from here. We're going to get married, have a family." "But you don't love Andi," Booker said. "I can't even imagine you with that self-serving yuppie." "He's a nice guy, Booker." "Why? Because he helped you raise the money to replace that old floor at the Elks Club?" "That was no small thing. Without him, I probably wouldn't have been able to start my singles club for seniors." "He only did it to impress you. Can't you see that?" "Booker, I don't want to argue about Andi. I'm trying to make a good decision for my future. And yours, too. I've got to go." "Marry me, Katie," he said suddenly, passionately. "I know I can make you happy." Her eyes widened, and 2 tears slipped down her cheeks. "Booker, I can't. You're not ready to be tied down by a wife and family. You love your freedom too much. I knew that when we first started seeing each other." "Katie, maybe it wouldn't have come to this quite so soon if—" "I'm sorry, Booker, I've got to go." The door closed in his face. When she drove the bolt home, he knew he'd lost her. Chapter 1. 2 years later. Katie Rogers smelled smoke coming from the engine of her car. "Come on, you can make it," she muttered, her fingers tightening on the steering wheel of the old Cadillac, which was pretty much the most valuable possession she had left. She'd purchased the vehicle 3 days ago after posting a garage sale sign near her apartment and selling off the last of her and Andi's furniture. Then she'd packed up what remained of her belongings and headed out of San Francisco before he could come home and plead with her to give him one more chance. She couldn't bear to deal with Andi Bray any more. Not with a child on the way. Not when it seemed as though she was the only one who was finally growing up. The smell of smoke became more pronounced. Katie wrinkled her nose and remembered with longing the nice new truck she'd owned when she lived in Dundee. She and Andi had used that truck to move to San Francisco, but once they'd arrived, Andi had talked her into selling it for the security deposit on a better apartment. "We don't want to stay in a dump," he'd said. "And we don't need a car. We're in the city now, babe. There are plenty of ways to get around. As soon as I start making the big bucks, we can get another set of wheels." As soon as he started making the big bucks. Ha! Katie would have been satisfied had he earned just a few bucks, or at least used some caution in the way he threw her money around. Because they couldn't afford parking, she'd finally agreed to sell the truck, but it was a decision she'd long regretted. If she'd had a reliable vehicle, maybe she would have left sooner. The "Welcome to Dundee, home of the annual Bad to the Bone Rodeo, population 1,438 sign she'd seen thousands of times in her youth appeared in her headlights. Breathing a huge sigh of relief, Katie began to relax. She'd make it home safely. After traveling 640 miles, she was only another 10 or so from her parents' house. Suddenly, the Cadillac gave a loud chung, and the lights on the dashboard blinked out. Katie frantically pumped the gas pedal, hoping to get a little farther, but it didn't do any good. The car slowed, trailing smoke. "No!" Katie shifted the transmission into neutral so she could crank the starter. Returning to Dundee in her current situation was pathetic.